Toyota has been building a legacy of excellence for generations, from pioneering hybrid technology to redefining the standards of safety and efficiency. Toyota is always innovating, always making progress. And with Toyota's legendary lineup of reliable cars in stock at your local Toyota dealer, you can experience the legacy firsthand.
So check out the unparalleled performance of the new 2025 Camry with style, efficiency, and available tech to get you anywhere. Or test drive a capable and affordable Corolla equipped with everything you need to stay cool and connected. And both Camry and Corolla are available with all-wheel drive, giving you the control to go beyond. Quality, reliability, efficiency. That's the legacy of Toyota. Visit buyatoyota.com, the official website for deals, to find out more. Toyota. Let's go places. Robert Half research indicates 9 out of 10 hiring managers are having difficulty hiring. If you have open roles, chances are you're feeling this too. That's why you need Robert Half. Their specialized recruiting professionals engage their skills with their award-winning AI to connect businesses of all sizes with highly skilled talent in finance and accounting, technology, marketing and creative, legal, and administrative and customer support. At Robert Half, they know talent. Visit roberthalf.com today. Hello and welcome to Happier, a podcast where we talk about strategies and solutions for building happier habits into our everyday lives. This week, we'll talk about why it's a good idea to go to a reunion, and we'll discuss a new parenting distinction that I've been pondering as part of my thinking about the open door, empty nest stage of life. Gretchen Rubin, a writer who studies happiness, good habits, human nature, the 5 senses, the open door. I'm in my little home office in New York City, and joining me today from LA is my sister Elizabeth Kraft. And Elizabeth, I love to throw a good distinction at you and ask you to help me think it through.
That's me, Elizabeth Kraft, a TV writer and producer living in LA. And yes, Scratch, that's how you get me to know myself better.
It's what it's all about.
Throw those distinctions at me.
Yeah. First, we have a few updates from listeners.
Yes, this is referring to episode 496. Dee Dee says, I enjoyed hearing about the Yale study about social fluidity during the first 3 weeks after a new group, e.g. college freshmen, comes together. I shared it with my college student daughter, who had complained just a few days before about how hard it felt to go to meals without a roommate. My daughter acted fairly uninterested, her typical response when I share the results of studies with her. A few days later, she said she felt sorry for all the people at school who were only hanging out with their roommates because they were going to miss the opportunities to meet other people more easily during the first 3 weeks. Neither of us mentioned where she'd first learned about it. I wonder if you'd consider doing an episode on the care packages that parents could send to college students. It would be helpful to hear from parents who've had kids in college about what their kids actually enjoyed receiving. Great idea.
Great idea. So first of all, I love that. And I know this so much as a parent. You lob some idea out there and you think nobody's paying attention, but then you find out, oh, they are listening. So that's always very reassuring to hear. And I love this idea about care packages. So listeners, hit us up for some fresh, original ideas. Now, we all know about cookies and we all know about candy. So I think we all know about those. But if you have more unusual ideas, this would also potentially be useful for holiday gift giving, but there is sort of the special care package practice. So I would love to get a bunch of ideas for that. So Dee Dee, great question.
Yes.
And we also want to remind everybody, if you're in the United States, we have an election day coming up. It's approaching. And, you know, in the previous episode, we reminded everybody that you can figure out if you're registered. It's great to, even if you think you're registered, to check that you're registered. And now your challenge is to consider and choose among your voting options. Like, are you going to wait in line? Are you going to vote in advance? What do you want to do? And so you can go to headcount.org/state and learn all your options for your state. Sometimes people are like, oh, well, my vote doesn't count. What's one vote? But it's really important that people vote. This is a way that we show that we're involved. Elizabeth, you and I, we talk all the time about what it's such a value for us. And I have to say, I went in to the New York State election site and I requested an early mail ballot. And I got a thing back saying like, thank you for submitting. You do not need to take further action. I like it when it's that clear. You're good.
Yes.
And then I got a confirmation number and it all took like 10 seconds. And so I feel like I don't have to worry about
how it's going to happen.
Any of that. Another friend of mine was saying she likes to vote in person. Elizabeth, I know you like to vote in person, but she's going to vote early. And she was saying her polling place is at the Met, actually. So,
pleasant.
And again, it's headcount.org/state. And that's where you can make sure that you're registered and get all the information that you need so you can make your plan. Research shows if we make our plan and commit in advance, we're far more likely to follow through with it. So really make your plan now about how you're going to make your vote.
Yes. And then at least in California, Gretch, once you send in your ballot, they send you texts about when it's been received and counted, and that feels like a gold star. So you can get yourself a nice gold star potentially from your state government when you send that ballot in.
We want them wherever we can get them.
Yep.
Well, this week our Try This at Home tip is to go to a reunion. And this is inspired because I have my law school reunion coming up in 2 weeks. And I was just thinking about what a happiness booster I think that reunions can be.
So this is so good, Gretchen. You know, I'm going to a high school reunion in a few weeks.
I know. And I was planning on going to this. I was actually starting to badger people to go to that because you and I are on the same high school reunion cycle, which is fun. But it's Parents' Weekend for Eleanor, so I can't go. So you'll have to go and get me all the hometown news.
Yes, I will. And you know what's odd is I always go to my high school reunions, or I try to. But for some reason, I've never gone to a college reunion.
I think that's so odd, Elizabeth. I think you would love.
I know.
Let me make a case for you. Let me try to explain to you why I think you should consider going to your college reunion or any reunion. This could be a family reunion. This could be a work reunion. I'm like in a season of reunions. I just had a work reunion from when Jamie and I both worked at the Federal Communications Commission. I love a reunion. So here's just some of the reasons.
Okay.
One is, it's that old thing, make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver, the other is gold. And when you're a grown-up, it can be hard to make new friends. And one of the great things to do is to rekindle dormant friendships. And there is something special about these friends from the past. And you run into them and those old times come back. And a lot of times you just pick up right where you left off. And it's very exciting to feel like, oh, wow, this friendship is real. It's not just a friend in the past, but this is somebody who's a friend of mine now. And also, I don't know about you, Elizabeth, but with high school and college, but the way I feel is I feel a sense of rare intimacy with these people from way back in the past, more so than I did with my Federal Communications Commission reunion.
Right.
Where there are people where I remember their childhood phone numbers. I remember the names of their pets. I'm deeply interested in their brothers and sisters and their parents. I could picture their birthday cake or their bedroom.
Yes.
In college, you just went through these intense times together. And I remember there was a time, I can't remember which reunion I was at, so at least in my college, you can stay on campus or you could book a hotel. And some people will stay on campus. And a friend of mine had found out that her dorm room was like right behind where the band was playing for the 25th reunion. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to sleep and it's going to be terrible. And I was like, look, I'm in a hotel room by myself. Why don't you just come and stay with me? And this was somebody I might not have seen in like 12 years.
Right.
But here I was inviting her to come stay in a hotel room with me because in a way I felt an intimacy with her that I don't even feel with friends now because it was so far back. It's a special kind of friendship.
And you lived together, which is just not the same as meeting someone for lunch. Yeah.
Right. And one of the things the research shows is that seeing people just often and frequently really deepens relationships. So you're right. There's an intensity there that we don't get later in life very easily. One thing that we've talked about a lot is the value of loose ties. So when we're looking to get a new job or to switch careers or to learn new information or meet a sweetheart or something, often people who are loose ties bring us more information than people who are strong ties, because people who are strong ties tend to know the same things that we know. So they're not bringing us a lot of new valuable associations and suggestions, whereas loose ties bring us a lot of information. And reunions, whatever kind of reunion it is, tend to be full of loose ties because it's people that you know them well enough to like go up and talk to them, but they might live in a completely different part of the country. They might be in a completely different field. You're not a strong tie anymore.
Yeah.
And another thing for me, and this is just kind of my particularity, is I often feel like I'm not that attached to my past. I feel like I'm floating through life and I worry that I'm not staying connected to the people and places that are important to me. So I put a really high value on returning. Like every time I go back to New Haven, I'm like, I'm going to walk by Yorkside. I'm going to walk by my freshman year window. I'm going to go back to my favorite coffee shop and see if it's still there. I'm going to go to the library. I feel this power. And I feel the sense of growth that I've gotten because I'm like, oh, I'm still the same person, but look at all the adventures that I've had since. And then the final thing I would say, and this is on a practical level, it's just so fun to go to reunions because there's so much to talk about because there are all these people around and you're like,
yes,
did you hear about this person? And what about that person? And have you seen this person? And what about this? And what about that? Like you're full of information. Like there's just a lot going on to talk about. It's just fun in sort of that catching up way. There's just so much to catch up on. And I find that to be intensely pleasurable.
Yes, I do too. And Gretchen, if you're looking for love, a reunion can be a good place to meet somebody.
I have a friend who met somebody that she didn't know in college, and then they ended up getting married.
There you go.
And here's another thing. So if you have a group of friends from a workplace or college or law school or high school or whatever, and you're trying to get together, it can be really hard to find the date. It's just very hard to find a date. The nice thing about a reunion is you're not picking the date. You know a year in advance that's the date, and it either works for people or it doesn't. It sort of gives people something to organize around. And so even if you're not that interested in seeing everybody else, it's kind of a good way. If you're the kind of person who has the core group of friends that they want to see, it gives you a reason to be in a certain place at a certain time. It gives you a certain kind of structure and something to do rather than like, let's just pick a random weekend in Chicago because it's the middle of the country. Or sometimes you just need something to organize around. And this is impersonal. Nobody has to worry about, well, is it more convenient for this person or that person? It's just like, it is what it is, and we're going to organize around it.
And Gretchen, if you have social anxiety, it's good because it's structured. So it's like you know exactly what to do. You don't have to just go up and make it all up. It's there for you.
Right. With my reunions, there'll be talks, panels, and performances and things. And so if you're there, like I often go by myself. And so if you just sort of don't know what to do with yourself or you haven't found somebody that you were friendly with, I would just go to a talk and then you run into people or something. But again, it's like you sort of have something to do with yourself. And so I like that structure.
All right, Gretchen, you're inspiring me. I'm going to see when my next big college reunion is. I'm going to commit to going and I'm going to tell my friends I'm going. And then maybe if I commit, they'll commit.
That's great. Well, let us know if you do try this at home and how attending a reunion works for you. What are your thoughts? Let us know on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Facebook. Drop us an email at podcast@GretchenRubin.com. Or as always, you can go to the show notes. You can go to happiercast.com/502 for everything related to this episode.
Coming up, a conversation happiness hack. But first, this break. Gretch, so many of us are trying to understand our bodies and how we can become healthier. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs.
And then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. Lumen is so easy to use. I find it extremely easy to set up, and it is just fascinating to know what's going on inside our bodies. And because our metabolism is at the center of everything our bodies do, optimal metabolic health translates into a bunch of benefits. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/happier to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/happier for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode.
Hey moms, looking for some lighthearted guidance on this crazy journey we call parenting?
Join me, Sabrina Kohlberg,
And me, Andy Mitchell, for Pop Culture Moms,
where each week we talk about what we're watching
and examine our favorite pop culture moms up close to try to pick up some parenting hacks along the way.
Come laugh, learn, and grow with us as we look for the best tips.
And maybe a few what not to do's from our favorite fictional moms.
From Good Morning America and ABC Audio.
Pop Culture Moms. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, Gretch, we're back with a happiness hack.
So this is really interesting and it has to do with conversation. It's sometimes referred to as the dinner party problem. But what it holds is that there is this remarkably consistent phenomenon that 4 people can have one conversation, but the minute that a 5th person joins, the conversation will start to split. Because 4 people will talk together, but the minute that there's 5, it's very hard to keep it consistent. Now, of course, you can be in a situation where someone's lecturing in a seminar,
right,
and like we're going to have a discussion, but everybody's going to be silent when the one person has the floor. Or sometimes you'll be at a gathering and they'll say, well, this is a one conversation evening, and so we're really all going to try to keep it one conversation. But I will say, having done this, it takes a lot of effort.
Yes, to keep people on task.
Yeah, because there's a very natural impulse to split. But here's where I thought an interesting hack for thinking about social events comes in. So I was reading this very interesting book called Friends by Robin Dunbar, and this is a lightly edited version of his observation. These natural limits on the size of conversation groups are largely responsible for the traditional size of dinner parties and even the size of dining tables. 4 people is perfect. 6 or 8 are also okay because they add variety of opinions, and a single table can accommodate 2 or perhaps 3 separate conversations, switching from one another. But more people than that means that the table has to be so large that conversations across it become impossible, and you end up being stuck with just the people either side of you. Moreover, it is very easy for someone to get stuck between 2 conversations and end up with no one to talk to. And he points out that if you think about events where people are often at large tables, it's because they're not really meant to be just talking the whole time, but a lot of the time they're either listening to toasts or maybe a speech, or they're getting up to mingle or to dance or whatever. And I just thought that this was a really interesting observation about what makes certain social situations more fun or less fun to navigate.
Yes, very interesting. I mean, I can think when I'm at a big round table at an event, often I don't even meet the people across the table.
Oh, right.
It's like they may as well be at a different table.
Well, and it is really tricky because if it's 3 people having a conversation, 1 person in the middle and the 2 people on either side leaning in, especially if it's loud. But if you're stuck on the outskirts of that,
yes,
you are sort of just on your own until the conversation moves around. So I just thought that that was a really interesting insight because it's just this dinner party problem. It's funny that it's just so consistent.
Yes. All right, Gretchen, now we have a know yourself better question.
Okay, so I'm just in the early stages of thinking through this. But, they say there are 2 kinds of people in the world, the kind of people that like to divide the world into 2 kinds of people and the kind of people who don't. And I'm the kind of people who does. And as I've been thinking about the open door, AKA the empty nest stage of life, and thinking about parents and thinking about, in particular, about the relationship with children, one of the things that occurs to me is perhaps we can divide people into 2 categories of parenting attitude. Are you a sculptor or a lifeguard?
Okay, so explain what each is.
Okay. So if you are a sculptor, and of course there's nuance. I'm not saying that people are 100% one or the other, but overall, if you would describe yourself as a sculptor, you're a person who thinks, okay, a parent has a really big role in shaping the child, in shaping the child's values, child's interests, child's habits. And with a lot of effort and attention, parents can really cultivate interests and discipline and motivation. They really are shaping the clay of the child. Then the lifeguard. And I recognize that these are like metaphors from completely different parts of life. So if anybody has more matching metaphors, tell me. But I think that these capture the idea well. So a lifeguard is like, hey, I'm on the shore. I am here. If you start to get in trouble, I'm going to jump off my chair and paddle out to you. But really, I'm on the sidelines. You're out there. You're doing your strokes. You're paddling around. You're doing your thing. I want to be here to protect you. And maybe I'll be like cheering you from the sidelines. But basically, you're out there swimming. And I am not influencing it all that much because you're out there swimming and I'm watching from the sands. So, Elizabeth, would you say that you are more of a sculptor or more of a lifeguard?
Yeah, Gretch, I think I try to be a sculptor and really get in there, and I get pushback that he wants me to be more of a lifeguard.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think sometimes, too, that people think that they're sculptors, but they're basically trying to sculpt a child the way a child would naturally be. You're really sporty, so you're like, oh, I'm going to make my child take a lot of sports lessons, but then maybe your child is sporty too.
Right.
So you feel like you're doing that, but maybe even if the parents weren't sporty, that child would still be interested in sports. We both love to read. Our parents love to read, but did they make us love to read or do we just naturally love to read?
Exactly. I find it is very hard to make somebody do something they don't want to do.
Yep.
As much as I might want to.
Yeah, you can't push a rope is the proverb that I often invoke. But I will say that one thing is I definitely feel like I'm a lifeguard. You get what you get and you don't get upset and people do best what comes naturally. And that's my philosophy. But I will say in my actual parenting, I think that sometimes while I might not take the credit for something that my children do, I might give myself the blame and feel like, well, I should have been more this or that or done this or had this message or inculcated this better. You know, there's things that you can drill into your child, like take off your shoes when you come into the house. We're talking about more like general, bigger things about a person's nature.
Right. You can't just say, here's a pad of paper and some pastels, become an artist.
Right.
You can set the stage, but
right.
You're not going to make a non-artist an artist.
Or that's what we believe, right? Because we're lifeguards, but maybe sculptors really believe that you could do that.
Well, true.
So anyway, I'm just starting to think this through. I'm starting to ask people, like I asked a friend the other day if she was a sculptor or a lifeguard, and she's like, oh, I'm a sculptor. So that was interesting. She immediately identified that way. So anyway, I'm throwing this out here, and I would love to hear from listeners. Does this ring true for you? Am I missing something big? Do you consider yourself a sculptor or lifeguard? How do you think about it? Again, so as I'm embarking on the Open Door Project, I'm starting to try to understand differences among how people think about these things. And so listeners, you are my research assistant. Hit me up with any of your insights and ideas and questions, and I'm pondering.
Yes, I think some people might say it's also a stage of life, Gretchen.
Sure.
They start as a sculptor, and then by the time the kids hit 18, they become lifeguards.
Well, I think that's an excellent point. That's something I had not thought of. Yeah, there might be transitions in parenting for sure. So that already, see, here it is. I've already learned something. I'm already taking notes, and that's deepening my understanding. So thank you. And now for the right way, because 24 is Write 24 and 24, where you can write for 24 minutes or 2 to 4 minutes. Elizabeth, this is very close to our hearts. So let's talk about favorite examples of writing, keep ourselves inspired, not books about writing like Stephen King's on writing, but something that you and I have found inspiring in our own writing. So I want to say to you, as a TV writer, what is like a source material that has inspired your writing?
I'm going to say 30-something, Gretch.
I did.
Yeah, the show about...
That surprises me, Elizabeth. Tell me more.
Yeah, well, 30-something was a show about a group of friends who had become yuppies, essentially.
Yes.
Young yuppies, and they were navigating the world as they had young children and went from sort of being young, carefree couples to families. And I watched it after I graduated from college. It happened to be a show that was on like at 2 a.m. every night in reruns. And I was in a phase of staying up very late. And so I watched it. In fact, I think it may have been 2 episodes, like 1 to 3.
Wow.
And so I went through and watched the whole series. And it really was coincided with the time that I started thinking about wanting to be a TV writer.
Ah. So as you watched, did you find yourself analyzing it in a different way or thinking about it as writing, not just letting it wash over you as a television show?
I don't think I thought about the writing as much as I just thought of like, I would like to be doing that.
Yes. Like, oh, this seems like a really fun thing to be part of and to create.
Exactly.
Oh,
yes.
Interesting.
Gretch, how about you?
So for me, one of the writers who I most admire is George Orwell, not so much for his fiction, which for a lot of people is what he's most known for, but for his essays. And what I love about George Orwell is he's always surprising. To me, he is the epitome of, he chooses just the right word, but a fresh word. You think he's heading in one direction, and then he just swerves entirely. Or he just makes points that you just don't expect him to be invoking, and yet it all works together perfectly. And the George Orwell Foundation has put all the essays online, so you can read all the essays, which are amazing. One of my favorites, if somebody wants to like try one, and an essay that I think I've read, I mean, dozens of times probably, is Charles Dickens. I read a passage from it for the More Happier for September 28th about the sausage and the rose of Tolstoy and Dickens. But there's just all sorts of extraordinary moments in that essay. So I would say for me, it's George Orwell, and particularly perhaps that essay.
Excellent. All right, Gretchen, coming up, speaking of the right way, I give myself a writing demerit. But first, a spray.
The wrong way.
Exactly. Gretchen, you know I love quints. And as summer turns to fall, even here in LA, it's getting cooler. I love slipping into my quints cozy sweaters. In fact, I'm wearing one right now. I'm wearing one of my cashmere tees. I absolutely love all of their cashmere. They're known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from just $50. And it's not just that. All Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
Well, and how do they do that? By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, which passes the saving on to us, the consumer. Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/Gretchen for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/Gretchen to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Gretchen.
Hey, happier listeners, we want to tell you about another podcast you're sure to enjoy called Need a Lift. It's a show that focuses on bringing people together during a tough time in our culture. Host Tim Schreiber talks to guests who have transformed painful moments in their lives into purpose through their spiritual rituals and practices and demonstrate optimism through their lived experience. Like best-selling author Minjin Lee on why she creates complicated characters who hold the secret to our transformation. And Olympic athlete Michael Phelps on the importance of cultivating an inner life in competition, mental health, and in his marriage. Need a Lift is truly the antidote to the hatred and despair we're all exhausted of hearing, giving us hope that change is possible. You can hear more Need a Lift episodes wherever you get your podcasts.
This show is sponsored by MIDI Health. There are great things that come with age, wisdom, experience, a love of gardening and holiday decorations, to name just a few. But if you're a woman over 40, it can also bring some less desirable things. Hot flashes, insomnia, brain fog, moodiness, and weight gain. All symptoms of menopause and perimenopause. I have friends of all ages, and I have been hearing about these symptoms for years.
Yes, hormonal transition is a fact of life, but that doesn't mean you have to accept its symptoms as just another part of aging. MIDI clinicians are menopause experts equipped to support you with safe, effective, FDA-approved medications, as well as lifestyle coaching and preventative health guidance. All their services are covered by insurance, and they're conveniently accessible through telehealth visits and 24/7 messaging. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com. Okay, it's time for demerits and gold stars. And Alyssa, this is your episode to talk about a demerit. What is this writing-related demerit?
Well, Gretchen, it's a classic, procrastinating. Sarah and I are in the middle of writing the first draft of a pilot, so it's really the time when I focus on just writing and nothing else. And I just having procrastination issues. I think part of it is getting back into it. As always, the stakes seem so high that gives me anxiety. But I need to just knuckle down.
Well, in Happier in Hollywood, I remember you and Sarah were talking about why writing a pilot is so challenging because everything is being established. It's not like being at the end of the first season where a lot has been figured out. It's hard.
So I'm hoping by saying out loud that I've been procrastinating, I will stop procrastinating.
There you go. There you go.
How about you? What is your gold star?
Well, I want to give a gold star to everyone who's so nice to send me messages on the feast day of Saint Therese, which is October 1st. We just passed it. I am not Catholic, but Saint Therese of Lisieux is my spiritual teacher. I have read her memoir, Story of a Soul, many times. I admire St. Therese so much that it just makes me happy to think that anybody in the world associates me with St. Therese. To be thought of in the same breath as St. Therese is exciting to me. And here's the thing, Elizabeth, I've been thinking that maybe one thing that I might do as part of my open door project is I might go to Lisieux, because there's all these sites that you can visit there and you can see her things and there's just a lot there because that's where she came from. And so I was thinking that could be a really interesting thing to do.
You have to do that, Gretchen. You must. Find the best time of year to go. Weather-wise.
Oh, that's a good point.
Book it.
Okay. It would be a really exciting event. And I've never done anything like that. I guess with Winston Churchill, I did go to the war rooms, but I didn't go there specifically as like, this is a pilgrimage to Winston Churchill. I've never been the kind of writer that felt like it was really important to see sort of the relics. But with St. Therese, I mean, she is a doctor of the church. I feel like that would be really interesting and valuable to do. And I would just love to sort of immerse myself in all things St. Therese.
Absolutely.
Okay, the resource for this week. Okay, the holidays are coming up. We're all starting to think about giving gifts, starting to make those lists. And a great way to get yourself going is to figure out, well, what kind of gifts does a particular person want if you're stumped? So I have created my gift giving quiz so you can find out whether your recipient is an easy to please, a tried and true, an enthusiast, or a connoisseur. You'll get a little report that will give you a lot of ideas, thought starters, and Eliza, I find this very useful when I'm trying to figure out gifts. How about you?
Yes, and it can also be good to use on yourself because people are always asking, what would you like? And if you do it for yourself, it can give you some ideas.
It really does. It's funny. And you can just take that at happiercast.com/quiz. And Elizabeth, what are we reading? What are you reading?
I'm reading The Wedding People by Allison Espach.
And I am just about to start Ghost by Jason Reynolds. And that's it for this episode of Happier. Remember to try this at home. Attend a reunion or make a plan to attend a reunion. Let us know if you tried it and if it worked for you.
Thank you to our executive producer, Chuck Reed, and everyone at Odyssey. Get in touch. Gretchen's on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and TikTok at Gretchen Rubin, and I'm on Instagram and Threads at Liz Craft.
If you like the show, please rate us. Give us those 5-star ratings. We so appreciate them. Give us a review. People are very guided by reviews. And here comes your rhyming reminder, because the fluency heuristic is real. If you like the show, tell others you know.
Until next week, I'm Elizabeth Craft.
And I'm Gretchen Rubin. Thanks for joining us. Onward and upward. Elizabeth, you are so good at giving gifts. Have you started making your lists?
Not yet. No, I haven't thought about it yet. I got to get there.
Well, the thing that I've learned from you is that a little customization goes a long way. So I'm on the hunt for customizable things because I do feel like that makes it more special.
We'll have to have some in our gift guide.
From the Onward Project.